Welcome to the White Lotus channel. Thanks for being here. Deck review. Cherlon's Mono Black Control. I call it Mono Black Rat because I think that's ultimately the win condition. He went 5-0 in a league, so we'll take a look at it. There's been a lot of different food decks, rat decks. Golgari has USP Dudes had a Gardens deck that was heavily reliant on Crypt Rats. From a food deck perspective, we had Bird of Paradise, Jun Food, not relying on Crypt Rats for win conditions, mainly on Fangred Marauder. There was another food control deck that kind of floated around for a while. I'm not sure how successful it was. Looks fun to play. Haven't done anything with that yet. The mono black deck that Cherlon played, I think, is probably the most consistent. Its win condition is pretty obvious with Crypt Rat. I like it a lot. If you like decks that take a little longer to play, you have some decision trees along the way, it's a good deck. It's not fast by any means. The way I try to play the deck, and some notable additions we'll get to in a minute, you certainly want to stay ahead on life with Candy Trail, Lembas, things like that. The Cauldron Familiar, of course, coming back and sacking it to the food token can keep you ahead. Reckoner's Bargain on a Gurmag Angler, different things like that. Just really want to, if I'm piloting the deck, you want to stay ahead on life because you're going to be using Crypt Rats to get to the win. Sometimes it's not going to be Crypt Rat just for, say, 7 or 8 damage. It may be multiple rat sweeps, right? You might be playing Crypt Rats, sweep for 5, another turn ahead on life, doing it again with another rat. You'll have a lot of multiple rats in the games that I've played in hand. Some interesting additions. Sweet Tooth Witch is better than Tempting Witch in my opinion. It doesn't have Summoning Sickness, where the other witch you have to tap. Sweet Tooth Witch you do not. It puts a food token into play, pay 2 mana, sack the food token, does 2 damage to the opponent. I wouldn't overvalue that food token, to be honest with you. The interesting thing about the deck is there's tension on one hand. I apologize for the noise outside. There's tension on one hand because what are we doing with the food tokens? It's not always just straightforward. You're going to need a food token to sack that, to bring the Cauldron Familiar back from the graveyard. You're going to need food tokens to gain 3 life to stay ahead on life. You're going to be using the food tokens for multiple different things. Sacking it to Reckoner's Bargain, Deadly Dispute, all kinds of stuff. I think I would prioritize gaining the life off of it because you want to stay ahead on life. But you'll be faced with decisions where if you've got 1 food in play and a cat in the graveyard, am I using the food token to gain 3 life? Am I going to use the food token to bring the cat back? Am I going to use the food token with Sweet Tooth Witch? Do I need the food token to sack to Deadly Dispute or Reckoner's Bargain? So you have that kind of tension, but on the positive side, it's optionality. So you're sequencing many turns ahead on how you're going to the game plan. But if the game plan is to win with Crypt Rats, then we would prioritize the life gain, but you're not always going to be doing that. Let's take a look at the curve. There's 17 lands in the deck. I think it's a little thin. We ran it as is, no changes. I feel you want a lot of lands in this deck in play. Mainly for Crypt Rats, obviously, the more the better. But it's the curve is low. Candy Trail can scry, help bail you out of it. But I'm always getting, I either feel short on lands or I'm just wanting a lot of lands in play. Moan of the Unhallowed, I usually use this for more defensive in nature. If I need a board presence, something like that, and I can't find a rat. I mean, you can put pressure on with it, that's fine. Does have flashback. Gurmag Angler, kind of a top end, can apply some pressure. But it's interesting when you have Sweet Tooth Bitch and some candy, when you pilot the deck, that makes you the sugar daddy. Sideboard, 4 Duress, 4 Chainers, 2 Kawambaj Witches, 3 Choking Sands, 2 Arms of Hadar. Pretty straightforward. We'll get into some games, see how it plays out. Magic. Match 1, Game 1, unknown opponent. Opening hand, 1 land, mulligan. We've got 1 land and a candy trail. We're going to have to try to dig our way out for some lands. Don't know what we're playing against yet. No lands on top, sucks for us. Don't know if this is mono white aggro or white weenie, as they call it. That's Boros. Needing lands badly. They're way ahead on value right now. It's going to be tough to get out of this. Not impossible, but tough. That's great. One thing I like to do, we might call it out again here in a minute. I try to, if I'm playing Familiar, Sweet Tooth Witch, anything like that, I'm always trying to keep, very much like the Grixis Affinity decks, always trying to keep 2 mana up to sacrifice the creature to a Deadly Dispute or Reckoner's Bargain. You're not always going to have that option, but that's how I try to play it out. The good thing is it's turn 5. We're only down 3 at the moment, but they're certainly establishing a board presence. We don't have a Crypt Rat. Right now, we just need to stay alive and survive. A lot of people will run out Cauldron Familiar on turn 1. You can do that versus some decks, but I, again, like to keep 2 mana open for the sack response. Moan of the Unhallowed is really not that important for us at the moment. It's not going to block anything they have in the air. It's really needing to get to Crypt Rat as soon as we can, and we're struggling at the moment. Sack it, draw cards. Gain some life, draw a card, hit the Crypt Rat. Can't play it yet. We could, but with the opponent with 5 cards in hand, I think I bring the cat back to the food, I think. And I think just gaining life off the food is probably a better option. But we're so far behind at the moment. Yep. Opponent with 4 cards in hand. It's really good to just try to stay out of burn range, but that's going to be really hard. Oh, yeah, we did gain 3 life. That's good. Right now, we have to do this. It gets us really low on life. But with the opponent with 5 cards in hand, I mean, odds are we get burned out. I think the better play here, to be honest with you, was to play the cat in Deadly Dispute in response. Opponent now has 6 cards in hand. It's pretty much game. But we'll go on to game 2 and game 3. Makeshift munitions with a Boros Garrison. He's got enough for the win. Let's move on to game 2. Game 2 versus Boros Synth. Opening hand is great. 2 lands. Candy Trail to lead. Limbus on 2. It's a fantastic opener. Don't have a cat yet, but we'll try to find it. The cat's not a main priority. It's more just a defensive play. Really like playing Cauldron Familiar against Sacred Cat or Tolarian Terror, where you can sack in response to prevent the life gain. And here you'll see we've got the 2 mana open. There's no, even if we had it turn 1, there's no reason to play it turn 1. You just want to maximize value the best you can, which is to play it later. Now we can play the Witch here. We can sacrifice in response if necessary, because we have the treasure token. But if we have it, he's got no pressure on us at all. So if we can put some pressure on with the Witch, that's great value for us. Again, at a 3 mana card, If you can get 3 damage in, and if you need to do 2 damage off sacrificing a food token to it, it's 5 damage for 3. It's not bad. But you're always presented with that optionality, right? You can use the food tokens for life. We don't really have to worry about life as much right now because we're so far ahead. But it's always there, like always looking at how we can using those food tokens in the best way possible for the maximum value. This is really good for us right now. Double rats in hand. It's going to be extremely difficult to lose this game. Doesn't seem to be the optimal draws for the opponent. But that's okay. We didn't have optimal either. He had a great draw game 1. We had great draws game 2. And we'll go to game 3. But you'll see a lot here, leaving that 2 mana open like all of the time. Just getting maximum value, which is fantastic. And now we can just rat win. But we'll do it multiple turns, or can, right? I wasn't worried about sacking the food and getting 2 damage off of it. It was more just playing the rat. So we'll rat here. Bring the cat back because we don't have to worry about staying up on life, so we're just going to get the extra point in. But it's game. We'll just play the rat, get the win, and move on to game 3. And the opponent concedes. Game 3 versus Boros. Decent opening hand. Would prefer a Candy Trail, Lembas, something like that. But 2 lands, some 1-drops, which we don't plan on playing on 1. We also don't have the sack outlets. So we're really just, we need lands and sacking, and we need lots of things. But the opponent's missing red at the moment. But I'm just not going to play Cauldron Familiar into Journey because he seems to certainly not want that in play. Can't say I blame him. It gets a lot of work in. Not as much against Boros because it doesn't have as many blocking assignments. But it's a great card. Gets value out of it. And that's the main thing. I know I say it a lot, but you just want to maximize value. You have to be extremely patient with the deck. Prioritize your life total. Now here it'd be great to, on the opponent's turn, to play Rowan's Grim Search with a bargain, but we can't bargain at the moment. So we're just looking for lands. Still haven't found it. Just going to dump some cards out of the hand right now because I don't feel like putting any in the graveyard. So just get rid of a creature and play Nile Spellbomb. Still missing a land. Playing the Witch now because I could maybe not do that and just put Mona the Unhallowed in the graveyard, but I don't think that's going to be the best play. Maybe it is. I don't know. We got the food token off the Witch, and that's important. Just need lands or a sack outlet. Lands work. Since we're not under any pressure by the opponent, let's go ahead and put some zombie tokens into play. Reevaluate on the next turn. Yeah, KCS is all right. I was a little surprised it was still in the deck. I mean, we don't really put that many creatures into play. When we sideboarded, trying to think what we brought in. It's maybe 2 cards, maybe. I'm not sure if I would bring Clark Clan in on this matchup. He chose to. That's fine. It definitely got the job done here. I'm going to go ahead and play the Ambush to force him to sack yet another artifact and to get another food token into play because we're behind on life. Not terribly, but we want to stay ahead as best as we can. With 3 rats in hand, like the goal right now is just to get as many lands into play as possible. And with the opponent at 6 cards in hand, it'd be nice if he would vomit his hand with creatures, but we'll see. And that's kind of what the setup is, right? We'll get, if we can get more creatures into play and use Crypt Rats to go ahead and wipe the board, do damage, and then the other 2 rats for the win. We just got to get ahead on life and play some defense for a moment. I was really glad to crack the Synth, revealing a Hawk, because Rat's going to get some value, some great value. We're quite a bit up on time too, but this is great. Like, this is the kind of board you want to see when you go in for a rat. We're only taking 2 damage here. Draw some more cards. Lembas to gain life. Drew some life off the token. It's 22-18. No worries. Play the rat. And the opponent concedes here, which is, that's certainly fine. The line going forward would have been wipe the board now, play a Lembas, gain some more life. See if he must not have that many creatures in hand or ways to get there. Maybe he was a little concerned about time. But with triple rat, Gurmag Angler, Lembas to gain some more life, certainly fine where we are. Time too would have been fine. So fun deck to play, I think. Interesting, but it's got to play it correctly. And I think the correctness in playing it is really how you use the food. Are you gaining life? Are you sacking it to the cat? Are you using it for damage off Sweet Tooth Witch? I think the right way is just staying ahead on life, but having the optionality with the tokens makes the deck fun to play. Thanks for being here. Stay safe and be well.